The Auburn Tigers beefed up that defensive back room on Monday.
You are Locked On Auburn, your daily podcast on the Auburn Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, welcome on into Locked On Auburn, your daily Auburn Tigers podcast. I'm your host, Zac Blackerby, and thank you so much for making Locked On Auburn your first listen every single day. We're dapping it up with the Dapprich, Montgomery radio legend on today's show. We'll also hear from Mark Zanetto of Locked On UConn, kind of a more in-depth conversation about Darrell Robinson, Auburn's newest running back, as well as Amaris Williams entering the transfer portal. But man, right as we sit down to record this show, Auburn signs Taye Seymour, the defensive back from Georgia Tech, and Raion Strader, the corner from Miami of Ohio. Let's start with Strader first. Darrell, this is a guy that automatically gives you depth at outside corner as soon as he signed the dotted line.
Nice size, nice length, has experience, had a couple interceptions with Miami, Ohio. You knew I was going to say it, a Pittsburgh kid from the city of Pittsburgh, attended Penn Hills High School, which is a football factory. So, yeah, very, very nice pickup. You know, we talked about how when Auburn did not get offered, that there was going to be some opportunities to get some depth in the defensive backfield, and I like this a lot. I love adding guys that have played at the collegiate level to give you some depth, and this is exactly what Auburn was able to accomplish.
Yeah, I don't think he's a starter. I don't think he's better than Jay Crawford or Kayan Lee right now, or Champ Anthony, assuming Champ Anthony's recovery goes how we all hope and pray that it's going to. But you needed more corners, and ideally you needed corners with experience. And let me tell you this, in 2013, it was his first year of playing where he actually saw the field, 759 snaps. Last year at Miami, Ohio, 756 snaps. This guy's played 1,500 snaps of college football at corner. Yeah, sign me up.
Absolutely. I mean, it's the portal giveth and the portal taketh away. And I think in this example, Auburn knew that they had its two corners locked down that had played a lot of snaps over the second half of last season. But, man, depth is important. With the case in point, Anthony going down. I mean, that right there is Exhibit A and proof positive that you better have some depth, especially with the way some of these SEC offenses have evolved. So I love the fact that, you know, we'd heard his name for the last couple of days. You get another body, an experienced body that can play the corner position. Obviously, he's going to get on the field and play some snaps regardless of who the starters were or are going to be, because he's still going to get some snaps. And why not give him to somebody that's used to playing collegiate football? So another good pickup in the portal for the Tigers.
Yep, no question about it. No question about it. So I don't think it really disrupts anything, but it does offer depth. And I think best case, he's the third corner. But honestly, like if Champ Anthony recovers, like he's probably the fourth corner. And Champ Anthony would stay at either number 2 or number 3, and that'd be a fascinating battle this offseason, 100%. So all in all, you certainly take it. You certainly take that. And then Taye Seymour also commits to the Tigers, who is a safety from Georgia Tech. I'm going to be honest, like you need the depth there. A guy who's played an okay amount of snaps. He just played 12 snaps in 2023, played 400 snaps last year for Georgia Tech. The skinny on this is signing Taye Seymour helps you with Eric Singleton, the very talented wide receiver who visited Auburn last week. I think Taye Seymour is okay. His stuff is fine, but if it helps you get Eric Singleton and he gives you depth at defensive back, I think you take it every single time.
Depth is the key word. You're not beating out Caleb Harris or Sylvester Smith. But remember, Laquan Robinson just jumped in the portal. So this, to me, is a natural replacement on a depth piece for a guy like Laquan Robinson. And then, oh, by the way, the added benefit of that is he's very close with Eric Singleton. So it makes sense on two fronts. Depth after Robinson jumped in the portal, and then familiarity with Singleton. So, you know, at the end of the day, when one leaves, you got to replace him. You might as well replace him. I mean, he did have what'd you say, 400 something snaps in last year. So if you're going to replace somebody
401.
401. If you're going to replace somebody like Robinson, why not do it with somebody that's had over 400 snaps in Power 4 football?
Yeah, which is more than what Laquan had. So we'll see. We'll certainly see what that looks like. But I don't. This is a guy who, he played more free safety than anywhere else. So, I mean, far away from the line of scrimmage. But he has a lot of tackles, but he also missed like 1 out of every 4 tackles he attempted, according to Pro Football Focus. His miss rate was 27%. As a guy that, Auburn uses their safeties in different ways. It just kind of depends on what kind of role that they want to have. But I don't know. This one I'm not as fired up on, but if it leads to helping your footing with Singleton, it's a no-brainer.
And I will say this too. There's always that opportunity for someone to get better and to improve when they get into a different coaching staff. I would really like the fact that Charles Kelly and Crondall are going to be the guy coaching him now. Yeah. And maybe that helps him with his tackle rate success with 2 dudes like that coaching him. Who knows?
Yeah, I think it's a good point. As far as the current state of Auburn's defensive back room, and just for full transparency, we're having to record this show a little bit earlier on Monday because we're doing the whole Christmas lights thing as a family tonight. We can't record this evening. So who knows? Maybe they've added more. But as of the Raion, Strader, and Taye Seymour additions, how do you like the current setup of Auburn's defensive back when you look at this part of the roster?
I like it, but I'm cautious about it because I would really like to know what the injury bounce back of Anthony and Tyler Scott looks like going into the season next year. If they weren't hurt and they were coming back full strength, I would say that it's one of the best units in the SEC, period. Yep. That question mark of those two and how they recovered makes it an incomplete for me. And because of that, I still think Auburn would be open to taking another defensive back if presented that opportunity.
Do you feel more confident in Auburn's corners or Auburn's safeties right now?
Starting, I think they're both equitably elite. Or both. We're both safeties and both corners are all SEC level. Maybe Sylvester Smith, not as much as Caleb Harris, but I think all 4 are very much, one of the better units in the SEC. It's depth. It's after that where it could significantly drop off just because of the unknown injury factor. So adding Strader and Seymour helps that somewhat. If Anthony comes back healthy and plays like he did before the Arkansas game, this unit is one of the best in the SEC, period.
Let's go. So, yeah, exciting additions. Raion, Strader, Taye Seymour. Excited to see what they add to this defensive back room. Auburn had some departures both yesterday and over the weekend. Let's talk about Amaris Williams and Walker White's departures. That's next, right here on Locked On Auburn. Today's show is brought to you by our friends at the College Football Playoff. It's that time of year. The College Football Playoff is back, and with the newly expanded 12-team format, it's guaranteed to be bigger and better than ever, bringing you all the hard-hitting and high-flying excitement that you love. TNT sports coverage of the College Football Playoff begins December 21st, starting with the College Football Playoff kickoff show presented by AT&T at 11 a.m. Eastern. Leading into our first matchup, the SMU Mustangs battling the Penn State Nittany Lions at noon. Then the Clemson Tigers look to upset the Texas Longhorns in a showdown at 4 p.m. Eastern. Don't miss a moment of the action. Watch the College Football Playoff presented by Allstate live on TNT, True TV, TBS, and Max. Thank you so much for making Locked On Auburn your first listen every single day. Darrell, let's go in chronological order here. So let's start with the departure that probably has the most chatter amongst the Auburn fan base, and that is Walker White entering the portal. I think there's a few elements to this. One is, him as a player, and then one is him personal. And I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time, but you never know everybody's full story. You never know what everything is going on in somebody's life. And so I want kind of most of this to just be from a player point of view as far as on the field. And him making the announcement shortly after Jackson Arnold makes his, it looks like optically, it looks like he didn't want to compete with Jackson Arnold, because I mean, Jackson Arnold's probably a younger quarterback than what a lot of us thought that it might be going into the portal window.
I think we're on the same page with this. I made a point on another show that I got it wrong. Well, I say that. We still don't know what could happen from a quarterback perspective. We know that Auburn could take another one. But I assumed that the main target that Auburn was going to go after in the portal for a quarterback was going to be a one-year solution, a one-hit wonder, somebody to bridge the gap between this year and 2026. I didn't think it was going to be a guy that had more than 1 year of eligibility left, and I thought it'd be a guy that'd be ready to get in the NFL next year. Well, So far that's not what happened. And to me, when that dynamic changed and Auburn signed a quarterback that had 2 years left, thereby making Walker White feel like he had to wait another year to compete for that job, I think it completely changed the dynamic, and I think that was the accelerator in this. I'm not convinced that if Auburn just went and got a guy that was a senior or a graduate guy that was going to just move and play 1 year as a starter, and Walker White and Deuce Knight were going to be battling it out in 2026 for the starting quarterback job, I'm not convinced that Walker White would have jumped in the portal. I don't know. I'm speculating. But I am saying that Jackson Arnold being younger and having 2 more years probably expedited this move.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess if you're like from Walker's perspective, I mean, Jackson could have been great this year and gone pro. Like, he's eligible. He's going to be a redshirt sophomore. So after this upcoming season, he could go. Is that the most likely option? Like, probably not. But I don't know.
What if he struggled? Let's say Jackson Arnold, and I don't want this to happen. Let's say Jackson Arnold is the starter for Auburn.
Yeah.
Let's say Daniels comes in from Stanford or whatever in the spring. And then, he struggles and they say, okay, Walker, go in and give it a shot. Well, there's your opportunity. There's no guarantee that dudes aren't going to struggle or dudes aren't going to get hurt.
I'm with you on that. And I think we're going to learn more about this based on where he goes, because I can't imagine there's a ton of places that are like recruiting him saying, hey, we need you to start this year. I just can't imagine that. Maybe if he goes down a level or something, if that's what he wants, but I don't know, when Hugh Freeze was recruiting him, was he saying, hey, you're going to start as a redshirt freshman or a redshirt sophomore even? Like, I don't know. I don't know if that really makes a ton of sense. So to me, I think we're going to learn more about what exactly the full picture of this situation is once he picks his next destination. So
I don't think he's surprised. I don't think he's surprised at all that Auburn got a quarterback in the portal. I think maybe he is surprised by who they got.
Yeah.
With the years left. Maybe that's the speculation.
Maybe so. I think the one that impacts the team more is Amaris Williams leaving. And I know Walker was a fan favorite. And the amount of folks that are commenting like that they're done for a little bit because they're upset that Walker left. Like, I get it. Whatever. Like, we all have our favorite players. No question about it. The one that impacts the team the most in 2025, I think, is Amaris Williams, because we were kind of expecting him to take that next step. Defensive line is still like a position that I think has lots of portal needs, and now they have even more with Amaris entering the portal. And so that one surprised me yesterday when he hit the portal.
Me too. I thought this was a guy that you were going to just plug in as a starter. Maybe talked about Falk.
Seemed like he was kind of next in line. Yeah.
But the more I started thinking about it, and the more I started hearing things and getting texts from people, consider where. Now, we don't know where he's going to go. This is all speculative. In fact, at the time that we're recording this, we don't. By the time it drops, we may. But remember which state he's from, Zach. He's from North Carolina. Remember who just hired a legendary coach to run the University of North Carolina. And remember, one of the conditions of this legendary coach for him to be brought on board is you better open up that NIL war chest and it better be bigger. Who's to say that he doesn't want to play closer to home and play for a legend, a college football legend? Who knows? I'm not saying we know that for sure. I have heard that. There has been some people that said, hey, here's what.
Oh, really?
I got a couple of texts that said, here's what the deal is. Now, if he doesn't end up going to North Carolina, that'll prove false. That's just the buzz right now. Kids can change their mind. There's a lot that can happen from now until the time he decides to pick his school. Was it Florida that originally recruited him and then Auburn? Yeah. So I don't know. There's a lot there. Again, like you mentioned with Walker White, there's probably more to the than there is to the surface to this, and to see how it all is going to play out. But it hurts. It's surprising because he chose Auburn and then he was going to play.
Yeah,
he was going to play next year. So it's not a playing time thing.
Yeah, and we've talked about this before. Like, there's a million different reasons why somebody would enter the portal. You got to think playing time wasn't one for Amaris. Was it relationship with coaches? Was it wanting to get closer to home? Is it money? I don't know. But Amaris entering the portal, I think, is I think it's a fairly big deal. But does that free up some potential NIL cap to go get somebody else? My gut is the answer to that is yes. So we'll see who all they get to be an edge defender next year. You know, you lose J-Mac. You've got some young guys in that room, but they need a little bit more now. And Amaris was versatile to where I think they could use him as like more of that edge or that traditional defensive end as well. I think he offered some versatility, especially if you wanted to put him on the field and scoot Keldrick inside at times in pass rushing situations. So I think this is a big loss. I'm not going to overstate it. Like, I think this is a big one. And this is really the first one that affects and impacts 2025. Like, Hank leaving and Walker leaving, like, that impacts the future, but it doesn't really impact 2025 unless, Jackson Arnold gets hurt. But this is the first one that I think actually makes next year's team worse. They've got to replace them, but we'll see. We'll see how they react to Amaris.
I think they'll have a plan, and don't underestimate too. Sometimes kids are not stupid, and they hear and they know who's being brought in for visits or who's being scheduled to be brought in for visits. It could be a case where a couple of really high-level edges were being brought in for Auburn to sign, and that just didn't sit well. We don't know. There's a lot of different scenarios out there, but that is viable. That if you hear, hey, this guy's coming in for a visit. Oh, they play my position? What? That's where communication is so important. As a coaching staff, you have to say, look, Amaris, we're not looking to replace you. We're just looking for depth in the room. And then let it play out on the practice field. Yeah. That's all you can promise.
Well, heard from several folks that communication is the weakness of this staff. So if you told me that happened, I would believe you.
And it's so,
up with what we've heard.
It's the easiest part of their jobs to me. That's why it's inexcusable. Managing the portal, re-recruiting your own roster, handling NIL, recruiting visits, game planning, play calling, those are all hard things that none of us can do. But by God, I can have a conversation with a kid right now, and I'm not a coach. I know how to do that. I can talk. I can pick up a phone and call somebody. Totally inexcusable that we're hearing this repetitive theme that communication's not a strong suit. It's not hard. It's the easiest part of their job.
Yeah, I'm not pushing back against that at all. All right, Darrell Robinson, the talented UConn running back, former UConn running back, who's now an Auburn Tiger. There's so much to like about his game. More on that with Locked On UConn host Mark Zanetto in just a moment. And yes, I teased him about not making the Maui championship.
Did you tell him that I want to change my name? I like Darrell Robinson so much. I wanted you and some others to call me Darrell instead of Darrell for a couple of days in honor of Darrell Robinson.
Oh, I didn't know that. I should have called you Darrell Dapprich.
Yeah, I really like him so much and liked him that Darrell and Darrell sound similar. In honor of him, let's call me Darrell for a couple of days.
All right, Darrell Dapprich. How can people check out everything you've got going on before we jump into that conversation?
Follow me on X, Dap6410, Instagram, Darrell Dap, and with you Wednesdays and Fridays, and sometimes we switch days and lives, basketball games.
Yep, absolutely. So be sure to give Darrell some love. More on Darrell Robinson in just a moment right here on Locked On Auburn. Today's show brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. FanDuel is America's #1 sportsbook. Hey, right now, new customers, you can bet $5. You get $150 in bonus bets. If you win, the FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets, whether it's on football, basketball, baseball when it comes back, all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Visit FanDuel.com to join today. You can get started with $150 in bonus bets if that first $5 bet wins. All at FanDuel.com. Today's show is also brought to you by the College Football Playoff. It's that time of year. The College Football Playoff is back, and with the newly expanded 12-team format, it's guaranteed to be bigger and better than ever, bringing you all the hard-hitting and high-flying excitement you love. TNT sports coverage of the College Football Playoff begins on December 21st, starting with the College Football Playoff kickoff show presented by AT&T at 11 a.m. Eastern, leading into our first matchup, the SMU Mustangs battling the Penn State Nittany Lions at noon. Then the Clemson Tigers look to upset the Texas Longhorns in a showdown at 4 p.m. Eastern. Don't miss a moment of the action. Watch the College Football Playoff presented by Allstate, live on TNT, True TV, TBS, and Max. All right, time for a little crossover action. Mark Zanetto, host of Locked On UConn. As soon as Darrell Robinson, the former UConn running back, now Auburn Tiger, tweeted out that Auburn had offered him, you sent me a text and you said, hey, watch out for this guy. I'm hearing things that, Auburn might be trending, and you were exactly right. So, in short, you've covered this guy. What's Auburn getting in running back Darrell Robinson?
Yeah, thanks, Zach. Darrell Robinson is an interesting back. He's a transfer from Charlotte. Played one season there. Had an injury history, but he was healthy all last year. Has good vision and speed. I wouldn't call it top end. He's not a 4.4 burner, but he's got about 4.5. Probably a top end. Good power. One cut back. Got some good twitch to him. He's big. He's 6'1", 6'2", 210 pounds. I told you pre-show to give Auburn fans a little bit of color on him or perspective. My comp for him would be kind of a poor man's Tank Bigsby. He's not a home run threat rushing it, but he's got straightaway speed. Like I said, he had an impressive year last year. Probably his best run was in a game where it was just kind of like awful. Neither teams could move the ball. It was against Rice, I believe, and he broke a 68-yard touchdown, and it was just like a bolt of lightning. So he has the highlight. He has big play capability. He had 8 touchdowns this year.
Yeah, I like the fit. I like the fit. You always kind of wonder what these kids, I guess, are being told and pitched on both sides of it, both from UConn and at Auburn. Like how many carries is he kind of, are they hinting that he could get? I mean, right now, I think he's third in Auburn's running back depth chart. I know he wasn't the starter at UConn, but like, is it better to be third in the situation for an SEC school versus, what he was projected to do next year at UConn? I don't know. But it does seem like playing in the SEC was important for Darrell.
Yeah, I think what myself and others who covered the team have kind of come to realize when you're a group of 5 school and an independent like UConn, is that we're a stepping stone, right? So even if you get a diamond in the rough, like this kid who transferred from Charlotte, who, to be honest, I didn't know much about when he came into the year and didn't expect him to be – I almost felt like he was third on our depth chart. But he kind of worked his way into the starting backfield at times. And the way Jim Mora ran his running backs was he just kind of went with their hot hand. And so there's probably some fool's gold where he dominated lower competition but struggled against like the likes of Wake, Duke, Maryland, the only kind of power 3-4 teams that UConn played this year. But the other flip side of that was Cam Edwards had probably the best game against Syracuse, so they just kept giving him the ball. So that was kind of the situation at UConn where there was no like starter; it was just by committee, and he probably feels he's more talented than what in the exposure he was going to get at UConn playing in the SEC.
Yeah, 107 carries a year ago, 731 on the ground, 8 touchdowns, as you said, just under 7 yards a carry, 6.8 to be exact. So I'm just wondering, like, how many more carries does he get this year? As of right now, Damari Alston and Jeremiah Cobb appear to be ahead of him. Then, Darrell Robinson, and then they brought in Alvin Henderson as a true freshman. So I'm just curious to see, like, what the market share and, like, the usage is. Because, I mean, Mark, a big discussion point throughout the season this past year was, Auburn has Jarquez Hunter, one of the best backs in the country, probably the best back in the conference. And there were just stretches where he wasn't used as much. And so, like, if you're the third running back in this offense, like, I'm not sold that he's getting 107 touches if the 2 guys ahead of him saying he truly is RB3. So just always kind of curious to see, how all of these chips fall. during the portal, and we won't know anything until the start of the year. We might get an idea a little bit in spring, just as far as what he looks like. But just kind of an interesting ad for sure. But I like his tape. I like what we've seen from him. And I think this is kind of one of the successes of the portal, where it's like, okay, he's working his way up. Maybe he didn't get the chance to play, in the SEC right off the bat, but now he gets to.
Yeah, I think that's a big part of it, man. And I would probably imagine that he's getting paid a little bit from Auburn, right? He's not going to the SEC out of the kindness of his heart. So, I think we have to add that aspect to it, where UConn has probably spent the most NIL money of the group of 5 teams out there, but they're still pales in comparison to what an SEC team can offer a running back to come in and essentially compete for carries, right? And I think that's part of it.
Let me ask you this. When Darrell Robinson announced that he was leaving UConn, in your mind, did you think, oh, this guy could be an SEC back? Or like what was – oh, you did? Okay.
Yeah, he's the prototype. You joked around about in the pre-show that he did his Letterman's jacket with no shirt on. The dude he's a monster, right? He's not a little guy. You're not getting, no disrespect to Victor Rosa on our team at UConn, who's like 5'10", 190 pounds. Like, this dude is a legit 6'2", 220, maybe 210, but like, he's a downhill runner, and he's going to bring some force to it. And I just think that it's a good fit for Auburn. And I don't think that it was a surprise to UConn, because he was probably our all around best running back. When you talk about, he only fumbled once this year, touchdown maker, physical in the hole. They ran a lot of stretch plays where, obviously, where if the line is going one way and then there's a hole to cut back, he's a great one cut back. So if there's any of that with read option, they did a bunch of that with Nick Evers this year before he was hurt. So he's versatile. The only thing he can't do, at least he didn't do it with us, is he's not a receiving back. So I don't see him catching a lot of balls out of the backfield.
Okay, good to know. Good to know there. While I've got you, let's just pivot to basketball just for a second. I wanted Auburn and UConn to play in Maui so bad, Mark. And we did our part, and I needed y'all to do y'all's part. Oh, that would have been awesome. That would have been so fun.
But the good news is, now that the news of Dan Hurley's demise was grossly exaggerated, as UConn didn't go 3-0 in Maui, but then they came back on the mainland and have been undefeated. So as he's been calling it, he's like, it's good to be back on the mainland. He's been milking that, which is the best part about his press conferences. But I do feel that UConn is fully back into the Final Four national title contention. And I fully expect Auburn to be there with John A. Broome. He's my national player of the year, and he will continue to be.
He's been so good.
If he keeps going 20-20.
So unbelievably good. It's like every night. He may miss it by 1 or 2, but he's always close. It's insane. No, I hope we play in the tournament, man. I really do. That'd be a blast.
Well, if that's the case, then I guess we'll have to take a road trip to San Antonio and do a live Locked On Auburn UConn crossover.
I guess so. Yeah. Why talk smack via text when we can do it in person in San Antonio?
Exactly.
Yeah, I think so. Hey, if Auburn folks want more UConn stuff, how can they get it?
Well, I appreciate it. Yeah, definitely check out the show, Locked On UConn. You can find it on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. Just use @LockedOnUConn, and then obviously YouTube. If you are an audio podcast person, would love a download. Find it on Spotify, Apple. I joke around this. Transistor Radio probably has podcasts. Just wherever you can find a podcast, Locked On UConn is there.
Yeah, however you're listening or watching Locked On Auburn, Locked On UConn is there as well. Hey, please like the video, please subscribe, and we'll see you next time. This has been Locked On Auburn.